Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Due to the COVID-19 emergency, tonight's Committee of Adjustment hearing is being held by video conference and live streaming video on the town's live stream webpage at oakville.ca. This is a hearing to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act. Please keep in mind the intent of this process is to review the application that is before the committee, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the applicant or authorized agent must contact the Secretary-Treasurer to schedule a new hearing date. In order to conduct an effective and efficient electronic hearing, we have adopted the following process. If you are watching the live stream of this hearing on oakville.ca and if you wish to speak to an item on the agenda, you can call 905-815-6095. Again, that's 905-815-6095. The phone number is also posted on your screen below the live stream at oakville.ca. Staff will be standing by to take your call. When you call in, staff will ask your name, item number you wish to address, and your telephone number. Further instructions will be provided for you to call back to join the video conference. When the chair of the committee polls for interest parties, the Secretary-Treasurer will unmute you, and this will be your time to speak. The applicant or agent will be given the opportunity to briefly explain to the committee the basis of their application, they answer any questions that may arise. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for a presentation. You will need to state your full name and address for the record, and any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All delegations must state their full name and address for the record. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided to make your presentation. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chair. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. The applicant or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to the comments made by any interested parties and answer any questions from the committee members. If the applicant or agent has any concerns found in the staff report, particularly any proposed conditions, this is your opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision, and that will mark the end of all discussions. Any person interested, desiring a notice of decision for an application must provide a written request, preferably through email, to the Secretary-Treasurer. Please note that you must make a written request in order to be included on the list that is used by the local planning appeal tribunal for giving any subsequent notice of appeal. A written notice of the committee's decision will be mailed no later than 10 days for minor variance and 15 days for consents to the applicant, agent, and other person who filed a written request for such notice. If you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal this to the local planning appeal tribunal, and the last date to appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal will be noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed time frame, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding, and the Secretary-Treasurer will then notify the applicant and anyone who has received a copy of the decision through written correspondence. People participating in the hearing are to be courteous to and respectful of the members of the committee, town staff, and other people participating in the electronic hearing. Tonight's electronic hearing is being video recorded and available for future viewing at oakville.ca. Thank you. We have no regrets this evening. Do I have any declarations of pecuniary interests? Okay, I see none, thank you. Madam Secretary, do we have any requests for deferral at this time? Or is there anyone in the galley that would like to defer an application?
I do not see anyone. I've had no previous requests, and I don't see anyone with their hand raised. I don't know whether you want to ask if anybody wants a deferral. They can raise their hand, and I can move them in just to be certain that we don't have any deferrals.
Okay. If anyone in attendance at this point in time is seeking a deferral, this will be the time to notify us. Okay, we'll proceed with the first minor application, which is CAV 048 of 2021, at 1417 Peerless Court. Again, the application number is 048-2021 at 1417 Peerless Court. I have Mr. David Carruthers.
Hi, Madam Chairman. Can you hear me and see me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. All right. Good evening, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. I am here this evening to request 2 variances to help facilitate the additional space required for this second-story addition. It is my opinion that these variances are minor in nature. The addition will complement the existing home and provide a balance to the second story. The new design will also maintain the scale and the massing of other dwellings and development in the neighborhood. The homeowners have reached out to the neighborhood, and we have provided 7 letters of recommendation. And I've gone through the planning report, and we see that staff are in support. And I would be happy to take any questions from the committee at this time.
Very well, thank you. We see that you do have the letters of support that have been submitted by the neighbors. Is there anyone who is signed on to the committee this evening that would like to speak to application CAV 048 of 2021 at 1417 Peerless Court? This will be the time to do so. In the meantime, are there any questions of Mr. Carruthers at this time from the committee? I see none. Ms. Secretary Treasurer, if no one has raised their hand, we are prepared to take the matter into committee if there are no questions.
I do not see anybody with their hand raised.
Very well. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Flemington. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the applicant's written application, as well as the town's written staff report, I do note is in support of. Also, having taken into account the comments by the applicant's agent this evening, and noting that there were 7 written letters in support of the application, and that there was none oral or written letters in contrary to the application, I would like to move that the application be approved as applied for, finding that it does meet all 4 tests under the Planning Act. And I would like to include the following 2 conditions: that the additions be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings. Number 2, dated March 08/21. And the second condition, our standard condition, that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. Have a great evening.
You too. Have a good evening. Good night.
Bye-bye.
The next item on our agenda is application CAV 049 of 2021 at 392 Tennyson Drive. Again, it's application CAV 049 of 2021 at 392 Tennyson Drive. If you are interested in speaking to this application, the phone number to call is 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conferencing at that time. Good evening, Mr. Capper.
Good evening, Madam Chair. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Thank you. I'm hanging in there.
I think we all are. Such is the time that we live in. Go ahead. Your presentation is on the screen now. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for the record, my name is David Capper, planning consultant with Glenn Schnarr and Associates in Mississauga. and our mailing address is 10 Kingsbridge Garden Circle, Suite 700, Mississauga, Ontario, L5R3K6. Madam Chair, as you mentioned, I do have an a presentation for application CAV 049 2021 for municipal address 392 Tennyson Drive. And I would just like to walk you through that. If I could have the next slide, please. Madam Chair, the property is located at 392 Tennyson Drive, which is just west of Third Line and south of Tansley Drive. As you can see by the air photo, it's a relatively stable neighborhood with a number of infill developments that have occurred along Tennyson Drive, north of the subject property as well as to the south. Next slide, please. The application before the committee this evening seeks the approval of two variances. The first is for an increase in the maximum permitted residential floor area. And the variance being sought is an increase of 2% from 37% to 39%, which will result in an increase of 20.9 square meters or 224 square feet of additional floor area within the dwelling. In addition to that variance, there's a second variance for an increase in lot coverage, whereas the maximum permitted in the zone is 25%, and the variance seeks an increase to 27%. And the increase in coverage also results in an additional 20.9 square meters or 224, just over 224 square feet of additional coverage. I will note, Madam Chair, if I could get to the next slide, please, that I will note that the majority, actually more than the requested coverage increase that's being sought, is accommodated in two areas of the site plan. First is in the rear covered porch, and then the second area is the front covered porch. But for these two sort of design and amenity features, the dwelling itself actually complies with the maximum requirement of 25%. In total, the covered porches and rear porch, is 27.61 square meters or 297 square feet. If I could get the next slide, please. In terms of the elevation of the building, this is the proposed front elevation. And you'll note that in the staff comments, staff do note how the second story has been somewhat designed within the second story roof line. Next slide, please. This is the rear elevation, and just on the sort of the right side of the image here, you'll see the location of the covered porch in the rear yard. Next slide, please. This is the northerly of the two elevations, and you can see very clearly in this image the rear covered porch to the right of the screen and the front covered porch or portico in on the left side of the proposed dwelling. Next slide, please. And then finally, this is the southerly elevation, and I believe this is the final slide that I have. If I could just get the next slide. Yes, thanks very much. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions should the committee have any.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Capper. Are there any questions at this time of Mr. Capper? Okay, I see none. If there's anyone who'd like to speak to item CAV 049 of 2021 at 392 Tennyson Drive, please raise your hand. Secretary Treasurer, let me know if there has anyone has raised their hands.
There is no one at this time.
Very well. Go ahead, Mr. Capper. Sorry, I see your hand.
Yes, sorry, Madam Chair. Just one matter of procedure. With respect to, and at appropriate time I can talk to you about it, but I do have a concern with one of the conditions that is noted. And at the appropriate time, I'd like to speak to that.
Okay, well, we have no one seeking to speak to the application, so my next item was going to ask you if you were okay with the conditions, and we can take the matter into committee at that time. So Go ahead, and we'll get clarification on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I have no concerns with the conditions that are proposed. I'm just not entirely certain that condition number 1, which reads that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated January 2021 and elevation drawings number 2 dated November 11th, 2020. There were a number of revisions, although the drawings themselves haven't changed at all. The floor plans have stayed the same. The elevations have stayed the same. There was a little bit of an issue with the way the architect had calculated the lot coverage. So you'll note that the plans that are posted to the town's website, on the site stats, the coverage permitted and proposed are slightly off, and they don't reflect the variances. So I understand the variance. The variances are correct. The drawings are correct. It's just that the condition doesn't reflect the latest set of drawings in terms of its date. And the latest set of drawings should be, I believe they are revision number 4, March 9th, 2021, I believe was the last set of drawings.
So we'll have Mr. Hassan confirm that, and then we can make that amendment in our conditions, not a problem.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I haven't seen those revised plans. I just went off what was submitted with the application in terms of the title block for the January 2021 site plan. But in this situation, if there's plans that more closely reflect what is being proposed, we can eliminate the dates noted in the condition and put it to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services, just so we can review and circle back with zoning staff when they're reviewing the building permit plans versus what was submitted for this application.
Okay, very well. I'm trying to pull them up, but it's taking a while, so I'm not sure what we have with our package here. So we'll do that. Is that okay, Mr. Capper?
Yes, absolutely. And my apologies about that. Unfortunately, it was a bad scramble at the last minute to get the architect to revise the drawings based on the final zoning officer's review. But yes, a condition which read to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning would be perfect, as opposed to the date.
Okay, very well. If there's nothing further, we can take the matter into committee and someone can move a motion. Go ahead, Mr. Talowski. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'll move that this application be approved as applied for, finding that it meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. I would note that there were no members of community in opposition. Also, with respect to the variances, the variance with respect to coverage is purely related to porches, which I believe add to the value of the aesthetics of the property, and that even though the house is larger than permitted, I would note that the applicant is not maximizing the building envelope and fully building out to the side lot lines. Madam Chair, I'd make that approval subject to site development proceeding in general accordance with site plans and elevations to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning, and that a building permit issue within 2 years.
Very well, thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, your application has been approved. Thank you, Mr. Cather.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening.
Good night. Application CAV 050 of 2021 at 96 Rancliffe Road. Again, application CAV 050 of 2021 at 96 Rancliffe Road. If there's anyone who'd like to speak to this item, the number to call is 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conferencing. Okay. I have Mr. Peter Giordano. Is that correct? You're representing the applicant?
That's correct.
Okay, go ahead, sir. The presentation is coming up right now.
Okay, good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Peter Giordano with David Small Designs, 1405 Cornwall Road in Oakville, and I'm the authorized agent. Can I ask you to go to slide number 3, please? Right there, okay. The subject property is a trapezoidal or pie-shaped lot, tapering from 26 meters in the front to 76 meters in the rear, with 2/3 of the property governed by Conservation Halton. We're here today requesting your consideration on 3 variances. The geology of the lot includes a heavily treed rear yard with a slope change that creates a top and bottom of bank or stable top of slope. Conservation Halton has applied a 6-meter setback to the top of bank, within which no structure can encroach. The footprint of the existing home, sorry, can I ask you to go right to the very last slide? So the footprint of the existing home, as it currently exists, encroaches into the top of bank. The new home that we're proposing cannot, and as such, it forces the home forward and towards the front of the property. Can you go back 1 slide, please? There we go. No, just right there. Thank you. So the tapering of the pie-shaped lot creates a setback and a pinch point, which creates numerous steps in the facade. I'm going to start by explaining variance number 3 as it directly relates to the items, the pinching of the property and the setback, 6-meter setback. So as you can see on this slide, the house is forced towards the front, requiring a reduction in the front yard setback from 11.45 permitted to 5.93 proposed. The variance dimension is measured to the front porch as the closest part of the house. The actual facade of the house, the closest part I'm indicating there is bedroom 3 in the plan, and it's at 7.41 meters from the property line. Since the existing home is positioned with a front yard setback of 12.45 meters, and the setback is determined as the existing front wall less 1 meter, attempting to work within this parameter would only allow the house design to be approximately 6.5 meters deep. So as such, the house has to slide forward to allow a proper floor plan to occur. Variance item number 2 requires a coverage of 26.77%, where 25 is permitted. The design of the house is a bungalow with a rear walkout from the finished basement, creating a slightly larger footprint and coverage, but we believe it's still to be minor. Item number 1, working backwards, it still needs a little bit of explaining. The home has a covered porch off the central public part of the house that steps down to grade. Right next to it is a private uncovered porch servicing the master bedroom. By definition, this uncovered porch is considered a balcony because it does not have steps down to grade and hence cannot exceed 1.5 meters as a projection from the main wall, where we're proposing 2.34 meters. By simply adding a set of stairs down to grade, this variance would go away, but since it's a private space, we don't want to add access to the public space and believe this to be a minor request. We have supportive comments from the city departments, plus 2 letters of support from nearby neighbors at number 74 and 82 Rancliffe Road. Ultimately, we believe our variances to be minor and pass the 4 tests of Section 45 of the Planning Act.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Giordano. Are there any questions at this time? Okay, I see none. If there is no one interested to speak to this application, CAV 050 of 2021 at 96 Rancliffe Road, we can take the matter into committee. And I'm assuming, Mr. Giordano, you've seen the conditions that are proposed by staff and that you're familiar with them.
I've read the two conditions and I'm fine with both of them.
Very well, thank you. All right, if there's no one, Ms. Secretary Treasurer, that's raised their hand to speak to this application, we do note the letters of support that you've submitted. We can take the matter into committee.
Okay, I do not see anyone at this time.
Okay, who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Ms. Murray, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that the staff is in support of, having taken into consideration also the comments presented by the applicant this evening, Mr. Giordano, that detailed presentation was extremely helpful, especially as you can appreciate, we're presenting online into the public, so it's very helpful. I also note that there are two letters of support from the neighbors at 74 and 82 Randcliffe, duly noted. I am satisfied that the variance of the application meets all four tests under the Planning Act. I also appreciate the unique nature of this particular property. I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application for the variance subject to the following conditions. That the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated number 8, March 18th, 21, and elevation drawings dated number 5, February 23rd, 21, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued.
Very well, thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? See none, all those in support? Okay, your application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you and have a good night.
Have a good evening. Moving on to application CAV 051 of 2021 at 256 Winford Place. Again, CAV 051 of 2021 at 256 Winford Place. If you are interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference. I have listed here as Mr. Brousseau. Is that correct?
Yep.
Good evening. And your presentation is up.
Okay. So. Okay, just give me 1 second here. Okay, there we go. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Stephen Brousseau from Stephen Brousseau Design. Address is 18 Beverly Street East in St. George. I am the authorized agent and the applicant for CAV A051 2021. I'm here representing the owners located at 256 Winford Place. We're seeking relief from the maximum residential floor area at this property. The zoning for this residence is RL8, which limits us to 200 square meters. And then the SP lowers it down to 126 square meters. So today we're asking to permit a maximum residential floor area of 149.80 square meters. The existing home contains a single-story dwelling down at the lower southeast corner already, which we'd like to tear down and rebuild with a few minor changes. The new single-story addition will conform to the side yard setback to the east, and we'd like to extend the addition into the rear yard, engaging the residents with a better view of Village Wood Park, which is directly located to the south. The existing residential floor area with the old addition currently sits at 146.70 square meters, and our new addition
will add an additional 3.1 square meters to the residential floor area, up to the 149.80 that we're asking for today. So if we can go to the next slide, please. One more. One again. So this is the south elevation facing the park. So the addition is on the right side here. And then the next slide. This is the east. So here is the addition on the left. We're tying into the existing roof structure on the right. And then, yeah, we can go to the next slide. This is a north elevation, so you can see the addition on the left side there behind the garage. And then the next slide. And this is the west elevation there. There's the extent of what we're looking to get into the backyard there on the right. So as mentioned in the comments that I received from committee, this type of addition is common in the area, with at least 2 other homes on the street asking for relief from the residential floor area. And along with that precedence, we have received 5 letters of support from the adjacent neighbors, including both next door neighbors. And those are at number 261, 263, 260, 258, and 254. We believe this variance to be minor, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Very well, thank you for your submission. Would anyone like to ask any questions of Mr. Brousseau at this time? Okay, I see none. Ms. Secretary Treasurer, has there anyone called in or raised their hand to speak to this application?
Not at this time.
Very well. Mr. Brousseau, we do note the letters of support from the 5 neighbors that were submitted. Who would like, if you're satisfied with the conditions that town staff have recommended, we can take the matter into committee. Okay, who would like to move a motion? Mr. Hardcastle, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, reviewed the submitted materials, including the written staff report, and having heard the presentation from the applicant, I'm satisfied that the requested variances conform to the 4 tests of the Act. And I'll put forward a motion of approval subject to 2 conditions, those being that the addition be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated 23rd of March 2021, and the elevation drawings dated 11th of March 2021, and that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued. I would note that there were 5 members of the public who provided written submissions with respect to this, and that there were no members of the public present to speak to the matter at the hearing. On that basis, I'll put forward that motion.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. None opposed. Thank you, Mr. Brousseau. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Have a good night.
Good night. Okay. Moving on to application CAV 052 of 2021 at 188 Gloucester Avenue. Again, it's CAV 052 of 2021 at 188 Gloucester Avenue. Good evening, Mr. Heather. You're muted still.
There we go. Sorry about
There
that.
we go.
Apologies.
No problem.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, committee members.
I just give me a moment because I note that there are some people that are in opposition, and I just want to read that phone number one more time as per our procedural bylaws. If anyone is interested in speaking to this application, the phone number to call is 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095, and staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conferencing. Go ahead, Mr. Heather. You can start your presentation.
Of course. Thank you again for your time. Jason Heater from HDS Dwell at 20 Gilmore Road in Puslinch. I'm just going to shrink my screen so the slide shows up there. My clients are proposing to construct a new two-story net zero ready home that will require 2 variances to the current bylaw. It should be noted that a previous application was brought forward on this property for a request for coverage variance that was slightly larger than what we are currently requesting. We had significant consultation with planning staff for this proposal in order to bring forward a concept that we feel works well for the site and the neighborhood in general. This pocket of Gloucester features great variations in home style and size. There's a rather eclectic mix of product, both existing and new builds, and a range in both full 2-story options as well as single-story bungalows. The first variance I'll speak to is the coverage variance. If we want to go to the third slide there. Frontage on Gloucester, it's a rather severely sloping lot to the rear, front to rear. The current house employs a walkout basement given the grade differential. We're seeking a variance to permit 24.9% coverage, whereas 19% is permitted. We've conducted a thorough lot coverage analysis within the neighborhood as represented in slide number 4. There you go, perfect. And you'll note that the average within this neighborhood of the lots that we were able to take data from, both lot area and building envelope, the average lot coverage in the neighborhood is approximately 26.8%, which is rather significantly higher than what we are currently asking for. The proposed dwelling meets or exceeds all setback requirements, complies with both GFA and height, and it's our opinion does not produce a building that is an overbuild for the site. The majority of the additional coverage relates to the larger single-story open covered porch elements on both the rear and the front entry. Those are open air, single-story in nature. And these two elements make up approximately 3.12% of the additional coverage being requested. The additional coverage is concealed well within the home and does not present any negative impacts to the streetscape or result in a dwelling that appears larger than other homes in the neighborhood. There are many 2-story homes within the vicinity. In fact, both homes that flank this lot are 2-story in nature. We've taken steps to minimize the scale of massing of the home. The roof lines have been stepped. If you can go to 2 slides ahead. There you go. The back portion of the home has also been stepped on both sides at the rear to increase the side yard setbacks to the neighboring dwellings, both north and south, and further reduces the mass and scale of the home itself. We feel the proposed dwelling is consistent with the mass and scale of the existing homes, and both new and existing in the neighborhood, and this new dwelling will fit well within the neighborhood context. Second variance is a really minor variance with respect to garage area. It's attributed mainly to a bit of additional storage space and to provide a proper 2-car garage. This presents as a standard 2-car garage from the street, and the additional area is contained within the dwelling envelope. I will note, and I know there are some notes that have come in from residents, that we are currently underway with the town of Oakville DESP process to review in great detail both the grading, drainage, and any arborist issues for the site. It's my client's and the town's intention to find a solution for the home that improves on the current grading and drainage, as this property actually acts as a bit of a thoroughfare for water as it travels from the north down to the southern street. We understand and have chatted with certain neighbors with respect to a concerted effort to improve the situation in the best way possible for all involved. I think you'll find that the proposal meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act and will result in a building that's compatible with the neighborhood fabric.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Heather. I'm glad that you made mention of the concerns that the neighbors have put out there. I see Mr. Key. Are you in? Is there anyone else that you have, Ms. Secretary Treasurer, that would like to speak to the committee, or is Mr. Key the only one on queue?
I show Mr. Key as the only one right now.
Okay, very well. Good evening, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. First of all, we support the variances. So that as Jason mentioned, it's more the backyard water problem that I'm interested in, and I've exchanged emails with Jason about that. And I just want to make sure the committee understands that there is a problem. And we've looked at solving the problem through drainage, alternatives, but it's really where you get the water to go, because the French drain doesn't work unless it's going somewhere else. And our side of Gloucester does not have a ditch. We do not have, there's a drain up on 188 Gloucester, but the two previous people that lived here, we've been here over 30 years, they did have a sump pump draining out there at one time, and the town shut it down. So, and there's another drain that actually, the water used to go to that drain, but that drain at 177 Watson, when the house was built over there, the town made the new owners fix up the drain to the tune of $10,000. But when we did our renovations in 16-17, the town told us that we couldn't drain into that drain. So we're kind of stuck at the low point between 182 and 188, and there's nowhere for the water to go. So it continues to be a problem. And I would like the town to come up with some kind of suggestions for us so we can get this fixed. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Key. We appreciate your submission. Well, I'm just going to reiterate what Mr. Heather mentioned. The development engineering site plan review is very detailed and meticulous, and I assure you that these issues, whether it's grading or the water table issues as well as tree issues, are all going to go through that process, which is independent of us as a committee. We only look at the variances that are before us and assess the application that is submitted before us. But the DESP, which is short for the development engineering site plan process, will definitely take care of all your concerns, and you will be notified since you are in the circle of the neighbors. So, and we have this all on record with COVID now. Everything is online forever. And we hope that that has kind of calmed your concern for a bit, and you will have the opportunity to speak in that process as well.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I just wanted to get it out there so that,
And you have, so it's there,
okay,
and it's
great.
on record.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. If the committee doesn't have any questions of Mr. Key or Mr. Heather at this time, we can take the matter into committee. Okay, I see none. Ms. Secretary Treasurer, if there's no one else in queue to speak, we're ready to take the matter into committee.
There is no one at this time.
Very well. Who would like to move a motion? Okay, go ahead, Ms. Murray. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town staff's written staff report, which I note is in support of, and having taken into account the presentation by the agent today, as well as the comments from Mr. Key, and noting, of course, there are 2 letters of concerns from the neighbors, Ms. Linda Wilson Pauls and her husband, as well as Mr. Key, and that this will be addressed in the DESP. I'm satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act. I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application for variance subject to the following conditions, which are that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated 3/17/21 and elevation drawings dated 02/02/21, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Murray. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Heather. Have a good evening.
Thank you all for your time.
We are moving on to application CAV 053 of 2021 at 164 Tresina Drive. Again, it's CAV 053 of 2021 at 164 Tresina Drive. I have Mr. Barton as the agent. Good evening.
How are you?
Good evening.
Okay, I'll just wait for this to come up. Yes, there's our plan. So the intent with this house was to design a house that fit in with the character of the area. So staff had noted in the staff report that the character is 1- and 2-story dwellings. So with the design, what we were looking for was a similar front yard setback, a rear yard that had appropriate area. There was a consideration for the easement that's back there, and also there's backing onto residential properties that front onto Third Line. And then also looking to minimize the number of variances that run the property, including side yards. So the design managed to do that. So with respect to, we had the variances for the size of the garage, the interior floor area, the floor area ratio, and the front yard setback. I'm in agreement with the comments that staff have. For variance number 1, the floor area of the garage will be internal and contained within the house. That minor zoning regulation really seeks to ensure that the garage doesn't cause an adverse impact to the facade of the home. So that will be mitigated through the design in this case. With respect to variance number 2, the floor area ratio isn't going to result in a negative impact that would change the character of the building. It is a relatively small difference in the floor area from that 29% that's permitted. And then finally, with the third variance, the front yard variance is really a factor of the orientation of the existing home. So it's on an angle there compared to the proposed design, which straightened it out. So where the measurement came to the point on the existing house and then taking a meter from there, that's really what was the result in the 9.9 meter requirement. So I'm in agreement with staff that these variances meet the applicable tests, and I'm also aware of the 2 conditions and have no issues. The owner is aware, and I'm aware of the regulations and requirements related to public and private tree removal, and we will adhere to those. The intent is to retain as much as possible on the property, but understanding that any removal or injury would have to go through the required process. I also saw the letter from the neighbor regarding, there were 3 comments. In terms of the survey, I'm not familiar with the survey for 158 Tresina, but I am confident in the survey that was done for this property, which was the base for the site plan. So I'm not sure, as far as I'm concerned, the discrepancy, the survey that was done recently to prepare the site plan, we're comfortable that it represents the property limits. In terms of the second comment, the owner will adhere to the private tree requirements as mentioned. The intent is to retain trees as part of the proposal, but understanding that there are these requirements should any injury or removal be proposed. And then same with the third comment that this will be handled through the private tree bylaw should there be any potential impacts along with that. So I would suggest that these variances do meet the test of the Planning Act, and I'm okay with the conditions and the notes about the tree removal requirements.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Barton. Are there any questions of Mr. Barton at this time? Okay, I see none. Ms. Secretary Treasurer, is Ms. Harvey in attendance to speak to the committee, or she just wanted her opposition to be on record?
No, she's in the meeting as a panelist.
Okay, does she seek to speak to the committee? Because I don't see her now. You'll have to tell me if there's anyone there who's interested in speaking to this application, CAV 053 of 2021 at 164 Tresina Drive.
Perhaps you can ask her to turn her unmute and turn her camera on.
Sure.
We just wanted to make our concerns known.
Okay. We do have your letters, and we've gone through the points that you've listed. If you would like to address the committee any further, just turn your camera on and go ahead. You have time allocated to you if you so choose.
No, we just wanted to voice our concerns.
Okay, thank you for your submission then. Are there any questions from the committee of Ms. Harvey at this time? I have to scroll back to see everyone in the screen. I see none, so if we're satisfied there are no questions of either party, we can take the matter into committee. Who would like to? Okay, go ahead, Ms. Murray, thank you.
Sorry, Madam Chair, a quick question for Town
Oh,
staff.
you had a question. Go ahead.
Yes, please and thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if town staff can shed any further light on the concern raised by Ms. Harvey. Concern number one, in terms of a discrepancy between lot lines shown on the plan survey of 158 Tresina and the site plan proposed on 164.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure what the discrepancy is, as I only see a site plan submitted with the application. In terms of the easement that Mr. Barton had noted in the back, that if that is the area that is in question, that area isn't detracted from the lot. It's a layer, presumably for stormwater management, which is consistent with new development that we see in the area to deal with stormwater grading and drainage. But through the building permit process, I believe a survey is a requirement for that submission. So if there is a discrepancy at that time, it will be picked up. But what I can see from the site plan, there does not appear to be any road widenings that are missing that would detract from the lot area. So hopefully that can shed some light on the question.
Thank you. Okay. Any further questions? Ms. Harvey, you need to mute yourself because we still hear a conversation in the background. Thank you. Any further questions or items of clarification? Okay, I see none.
Sorry, no.
Okay. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Flemington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as noting that the town's staff written report is in support of the application, as well as taking into account the comments presented by the application this evening. Noting that there was one written letter raising concerns with regards to the application, and that comments were made by that neighbor, and noting that some of those issues that were there will be dealt through the DESP. So I think that the neighbors should be aware of that process. As well, noting that there were no written or oral letters of support for the application. I do want to move a motion that the application be approved as applied for, finding that it meets the finding that it meets the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and noting the items that the applicant has done to deal with the massing within the how they've stepped back the building. So I'd like to move the motion be applied for, be approved with the following conditions. Excuse me. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation?
I just got the conditions.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. That the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated with the elevation drawings dated number 1, February 9th, 2021. And our standard condition that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Okay, very well. Just a point of clarification from planning. This application is subject to a DSP or a site plan process?
Yeah, to you, Madam Chair, this property is zoned residential low 2, so RL2-0, so the Suffolk zone requires any new development to go through the development engineering site plan approval process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very well. I was just scrolling down to make sure. Okay, is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barton. Okay, application CAV 054 of 2021 at 340 Watson Avenue. Again, the application number is CAV 054 at 340 Watson Avenue. If anyone is interested in speaking to this application, the number to call is 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conferencing. I have Mr. Werner Kram. Is that correct?
Yes, you have me here.
Good evening. Can you turn your camera on, sir? That'd be great. Okay, perfect.
All right, I'm getting
Go ahead, and your presentation is loading as we speak.
Yes. What we're here for tonight is to ask for a variance to allow a one-story rear addition to the existing house. One variance required is for coverage, and that's it. I believe that it's an old house. It needs a little bit of updating. It's a main additions off the kitchen. There will be a new kitchen being installed inside and open up to the nice backyard. I believe it meets the criteria for a minor variance, and be glad to answer any questions you have.
Very well, thank you, sir. Are there any questions of Mr. Kram at this time or items of clarification? I see none. Ms. McRae, is there anyone who's called in or is in the galley to speak to this application?
Not at this time.
Okay, very well. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Talowski. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'm pleased to move that this application be approved as applied for, finding that it meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. Similar to the previous coverage variance in this neighborhood, I find that the variance being requested is consistent with the coverage in the area. I would make that approval subject to the addition being constructed in general accordance with the site plan dated May 20th, 2020, and the undated elevation drawings submitted with the application, and that a building permit issues within 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
I'd also note that there was no opposition from the community.
Thank you, Mr. Otlowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Good evening, Mr. Cram.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and the committee members. Have a good night.
So we are on application CAV 055 of 2021 at 288 Wedgwood Drive. Again, the application is CAV 055 of 2021 at 288 Wedgwood Drive. If anyone would like to speak to this application, the number to call is 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conferencing. I have Mr. Smith on.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, committee members. I'm in front of you today to present, ask for the relief on 5 variances for this particular new home. The variance number 5 and variance number 1 have similar reasonings for them. We're pulling the house forward slightly and requesting a reduction in the front yard setback. This, as a result, to also means that we need to have the driveway, which is on the Ascot Crescent side of the property, is a little closer to the corner than the bylaw requires. So these 2 variances sort of go hand in hand, and the reason for that is we're trying to maintain more rear yard amenity space for pool and some other spaces or other amenity areas, as well as maintaining as many of the trees as possible. There's quite a lot of trees across the backyard. We feel this variance is minor. It is in keeping with the streetscape. It's not grossly out of proportion with what's happening, and it is to the columns of the porch where the house is set back a few feet behind that. The other variance that we're applying for is for height. We worked quite diligently with the planning department to reduce and in fact change the entire design of the house to reduce the height from what we had originally had it at just over 10.5 meters down to 9.3. This changed the overall design, and as a result, we feel that variance is extremely minor. It really is dealing with some of the slopes in the flat portion of the roof at the very top. The other variance is quite minor as well. This is for the projection of the garage. Because it's facing Ascot, a small portion of the rear portion of the garage was pulled back to minimize the coverage and footprint of the house. This pulled it back more than what the variance or the bylaw allowed, and therefore we had to add a variance for this. In keeping the house relatively small in proportion to the neighborhood and to the lot, we kept our coverage down to approximately just over 20%. And part of that was to help maximize the rear yard. But as a result, we ended up having to put some of the living space above the garage. We did reduce the overall height of the garage to keep it in proportion, to keep the main body of the house larger, by stepping the second floor space down from the main body of the house. But this still created the garage as being taller than 6 meters, and therefore the garage itself had to be included within the floor area of the calculations, and therefore that pushed us over from what we were originally applying for up to what you currently see before you. We did, however, trade that off with the fact that the variance or the coverage was significantly less than what was allowed. We've worked quite diligently with the planning department to modify the original variances, and I believe that in agreement with their comments. We also have 3 signed letters from neighbors, and 1 has submitted as well, an approval as well. I'm open to any comments the committee might have.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any questions or items of clarification? Ms. Murray, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to staff. It appears that there are 2 driveways on the renderings, but I believe the idea was to have the driveway to the corner similar to 302 Wedgwood. Is it going to be both 1 driveway or 2?
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe Mr. Smith may be able to speak to that, but we did catch that in the earlier review or the prelim review of the application. Those renderings, I believe, were done about a month or two ago. Mr. Smith may be able to correct me, but the dwelling itself remains the same. That driveway has been removed through discussions with development engineering staff to review the entrance permits. So there'll only be one entrance off of the Alstott interface.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other items of clarification or questions? I see none. Ms. Secretary Treasurer, if no one has called in for this application, we're ready to take the matter into committee.
Not at this time.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, reviewed the written materials and submitted materials by the applicant, and having heard the presentation by the applicant, I'm satisfied that the requested variances conform to the four tests of the Act, and I'll put forward a motion of approval, subject to two conditions, those being that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan number 9, dated March 23rd, 2021, and the elevation drawings number 8, dated January 3rd, 2021, and that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction, noting that there were 5 letters of support submitted in support of the application.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay. The application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and committee members. Have a good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Smith. We are on application CAV 056 of 2021 at 150 Riverview Street. Again, the application number is CAV 056 of 2021 at 150 Riverview Street. If anyone would like to speak to this application, the phone number to call is 905-815-6095. Do we have Ms. Elgindi?
Yes.
Okay, very well.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of committee. My name is Noor Gindi, and I'm the authorized agent for 150 Riverview Street. We did receive a positive staff report, and I believe the variance is minor in nature. So if you do not have any questions for me, I look for your approval.
This is the rear addition, the sunroom.
Yes.
With a variance for a rear yard.
Yes, so we're requesting, yes, exactly, for the rear yard.
Are there any questions of Ms. Elgendi at this time? Or items of clarification? No, I see none. If no one is called to speak to this application, Madam Secretary, we can take the matter into committee.
There's no one at this time.
Very well. Go ahead, Mr. Flemington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as noting that the town staff written report is in favor of the application, noting that there were no negative letters of support or oral objections to the application. And I would like to move the motion that the application be approved as applied for with the following conditions: that the rear addition be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated January 26, 2021, and our standard condition that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good evening. Okay, the last item on our agenda this evening is CAV 057 of 2021 at 549 Rebecca Street. Again, it's CAV 057 of 2021 at 549 Rebecca Street. We have Mr. Barrett. Go ahead, Mr. Barrett. Good evening.
Good evening, committee members, Madam Chair. Graham Barrett of 1575 Dundas Street West in Toronto, agent for the owner of 549 Rebecca. I have a brief presentation that I can give if you'd like.
Go ahead.
We're proposing 2 minor variances from the zoning bylaw to permit construction of a second-story addition on existing, which is what is before you right now. If you flip to the next slide, you will see the proposed dwelling. Relief is required for the side yard setback to the second floor on the east side. 2.4 meters is required, 1.6 is proposed. This reduced setback is to the proposed chimney. If you skip ahead 2 pages, you can see the site plan, which has the variances highlighted there. So it's just that red square is where the side yard setback variance is. And if you go back 1, apologies for the order, this is what this home would look like if that second story were to comply with the required setback. So it's arguably awkward compared to the actual proposal on the previous slide. We're also proposing a very minor variance for coverage, which is required to maintain the existing shed. Really, that's it. It's pretty simple. The rest of the pages in this are the plans as submitted. There are some photos at the end if you'd like to take a look. The first is showing the view of the backyard, where you can see the shed that is to remain on the left side, and some other comparable 2-story dwellings. The next picture is a view of the east side, where this variance is required. The adjacent neighbor is in the process of building a new garage there. The next is a view east down Rebecca, with more comparable 2-story dwellings a little bit further down. The last one is a view across the street of another neighborhood with many 2-story dwellings. Neighbors have been consulted about this, and support letters have been submitted from both adjacent and one in behind. Staff are in support, and we appreciate their favorable comments. I am aware of the 2 standard conditions. This is quite minor. I believe it passes the 4 tests as set up by the Planning Act, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Barrett. We appreciate your submission. Are there any questions at this time? I see none. And we do note that we have those letters of support, and if there's no one that is here to speak to this application, Madam Secretary Treasurer, we can move the matter into the committee.
Okay, there's no one at this time.
Very well. Who would like to take this one? Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the written materials, including the submission from the applicant and the written staff report, having undertaken my site visit and heard the presentation from the applicant, I'm satisfied that the requested variances conform with the 4 tests of the Act, and that the resultant dwelling will protect the character of the neighborhood. On that basis, I'll put forward a motion of approval, subject to 2 standard conditions. Those being that the addition be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated March 24th, 2021. And the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued for the proposed construction. I would note that there were 3 letters of support received with respect to this matter.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Mr. Talowski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I just wanted to acknowledge and thank the applicant for providing the committee with the alternative drawing which showed the compliant dwelling, and I found it very helpful to show that in this case the variance was actually adding to the appeal on the streetscape. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Talowski. I'm sure Mr. Barrett's happy to hear that.
I am, thank you.
Okay, if there are no further comments or further discussion on the recommendation, all those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Have a good evening.
Great, thanks a lot, and have a good evening, everybody, as well.
You as well. Okay, we have minutes to confirm for April 6th. Who would like to confirm those minutes. Ms. Murray, thank you. And then motion to adjourn. But thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. At 8:15. Okay, thank you.